Hey gang, Pastor Hans here, and we're in day 3 of our 5-day walk through the little tiny book of the Bible called Philemon. It's a letter written by a guy named Paul to his good friend Philemon. Philemon's slave, Onesimus, has run away, and by coincidence, Paul has had an encounter with him, and Onesimus, with Paul's influence, has come to know Jesus. Onesimus now is headed back home, and Paul is writing to Philemon to tell him about Onesimus's faith and encourage Philemon to now welcome this former slave, not as his slave, but now as a fellow brother in Christ. So today in our reading, Paul's words, they remind us of those times when we've been hurt or we've hurt someone else, and how, well, you know this, going back to that relationship, going back home, going back and reconciling, it's just plain hard. Friends, you know this, relationships are hard, aren't they? I mean, let's be honest, we all struggle with relationships from time to time. We've all been there. Someone hurt you. They cheated on you. They turned on you. They embarrassed you. They lied to you. We've also had those moments where we've been the embarrassment. We've been the one hurting someone else. We told that half-truth. We wronged someone. And when that happens, here's what you know. Reconciling, repairing those relationships, going back, it's really, really hard. That seems to be what Paul is talking about in his letter to Philemon. He writes in verses 12 through 16, I am sending him, who is my very heart, back to you. I would have liked to keep him with me so that he could take your place in helping me while I am in chains for the gospel. But I did not want to do anything without your consent, so that any favor you do would not seem forced, but would be voluntary. Perhaps the reason he was separated from you for a little while was that you might have him back forever, no longer as a slave, but better than a slave, as a dear brother. He is very dear to me, but even dearer to you, both as a fellow man and as a brother in the Lord. Philemon's slave, Onesimus, escaped, and he fled from Philemon. Now, needless to say, I imagine this created all kinds of tension for Philemon. In fact, I'm certain he had all kinds of feelings as he thought about Onesimus. Now, though, Onesimus, changed by his newfound faith in Jesus, he's going to go back home to Philemon. He's going back, and he wants to repair his relationship with Philemon. I can't imagine the sort of courage that would have taken. Paul is asking that Philemon welcome him back, that they reconcile, that a new relationship would be born, that Onesimus would no longer be seen as a slave, but as a brother to Philemon in faith. Here's what you know. I know this. We all know the courage it takes to repair those relationships in our lives that have been damaged, either by our own fault, by some circumstance, or maybe someone else's poor decision-making. It's just plain hard to go back. Paul knows it's a risky proposition, but he trusts in the redeeming love of Christ, that this redeeming love of Christ is able to repair even the most mangled relationships. So as we close today, I want to ask you to consider a couple of questions. What relationships in your life are in need of repair? And secondly, what risk could you take for the sake of that relationship, trusting in the power of God's redeeming love?